prescient as the jest elaborately rolled on to its denouncement. "Course he may have been meeting a girl," they said. "Naw, I think he was waiting for his old roommate, Sir Jerusalem Doak." He exploded, "Oh, spring it, you boneheads! What's the great joke?" "Hooray, George is peeved," snickered Sidney Finkelstein, while a grin went round the table. Gunch revealed the shocking truth. He had seen Babbitt coming out of a motion picture theater at noon. They kept it up, with 100 variations, 100 guffaws. They said that he had gone to the movies during business hours. He didn't so much mind Gunch, but he was annoyed by Sidney Finkelstein, that brisk, lean, red-headed explainer of jokes. He was bothered, too, by the lump of ice in his glass of water. It was too large. It spun round and burned his nose when he tried to drink. He raged that Finkelstein was like that lump of ice. But he won, though. He kept up his banter till they grew tired of the superlative jest and turned to the great problems of the day. He reflected, "What's the matter with me today? Seems like I've got an awful grouch. Only they talk so darn much. But I better steer careful and keep my mouth shut." As they lighted their cigars he mumbled, "Gotta get back." And on a chorus of "If you will go spending your mornings with lady ushers at the movies," he escaped. He heard them giggling. He was embarrassed. While he was most bombastically agreeing with the coat man that the weather was warm, he was conscious that he was longing to run childishly with his troubles to the comfort of the fairy child. 3. He kept Miss McGowan after he had finished dictating. He searched for a topic which would warm her office impersonality into friendliness. "Where you going on your vacation?" he purred. "I'll go upstate to a farm. Do you want me to have the Siddons lease copied this afternoon?" "Oh, no hurry about it. I suppose you have a great time when you get away from us cranks in the office." She rose and gathered her pencils. "Oh, nobody's cranky here. I think I can get it copied after I do the letters." She was gone. Babbitt utterly repudiated the view that he had been trying to discover how approachable was Miss McGowan. "Course, knew there was nothing doing," he said. 4. Eddie Swanson, the motor car agent who lived across the street from Babbitt, was giving a Sunday supper. His wife, Louetta, young Louetta, who loved jazz and music and in clothes and laughter, was at her wildest. She cried, "We'll have a real party," as she received the guests. Babbitt had uneasily felt that to many men she might be alluring. Now he admitted that to himself she was overwhelmingly alluring. Mrs. Babbitt had never quite approved of Louetta. Babbitt was glad that she was not here this evening. He insisted on helping Louetta in the kitchen, taking the chicken croquettes from the warming oven, the lettuce sandwiches from the ice box. He held her hand once, and she depressingly didn't notice it. She caroled, "You're a good little mother's helper, Georgie. Now trot in with that tray and leave it on the side table." He wished that Eddie Swanson would give them cocktails, that Louetta would have one. He wanted to be one of those bohemians you read about, studio parties, wild, lovely girls who were independent, not necessarily bad, certainly not, but not tame like Floral Heights. How he'd ever stood it all these years. Eddie did not give them cocktails. True, they supped with mirth, and with several repetitions by Orville Jones of "Any time Louetta wants to come in and sit on my lap, I'll tell this sandwich to beat it." But they were respectable, as befitted Sunday evening. Babbitt had discreetly preempted a place beside Louetta on the piano bench. While he talked about motors, while he listened with a fixed smile to her account of the film she had seen last Wednesday, while he hoped that she would hurry up and finish her description of the plot, the beauty of the leading man, and the luxury of the setting, he studied her. Slim waist girdled with raw silk, strong brows, ardent eyes, hair parted above a broad forehead. She meant youth to him and a charm which saddened. He thought of how valiant a companion she would be on a long motor tour, exploring mountains, picnicking in a pine grove high above a valley. Her frailness touched him. He was angry at Eddie Swanson for the incessant family bickering. All at once he identified Louetta with the fairy girl. He was startled by the conviction that they had always had a romantic attraction for each other. "I suppose you're leading a simply terrible life, now you're a widower," she said. "You bet. I'm a bad little fellow and proud of it. Some evening you slip Eddie some dope in his coffee and sneak across the road, and I'll show you how to mix a cocktail," he roared. "Well, now, I might do that. You never can tell." "Well, whenever you're ready, you just hang a towel on the attic window, and I'll jump for the gin." Everyone giggled at his naughtiness. In a pleased way Eddie Swanson stated that he would have a physician analyze his coffee daily. The others were diverted to a discussion of the more agreeable recent murders. But Babbitt drew Louetta back to personal things. "That's the prettiest dress I ever saw in my life." "Do you honestly like it?" "Like it? Why, say, I'm going to have Kenneth Escott put a piece in the paper saying that the swellest dressed woman in the U.S. is Mrs. E. Louetta Swanson." "Now you stop teasing me." But she beamed. "Let's dance a little, George. You've got to dance with me." Even as he protested, "Oh, you know what a rotten dancer I am," he was lumbering to his feet. "I'll teach you. I can teach anybody." Her eyes were moist, her voice was jagged with excitement. He was convinced that he had won her. He clasped her, conscious of her smooth warmth, and solemnly he circled in a heavy version of the one-step. He bumped into only one or two people. "Gosh, I'm not doing so bad, hitting 'em up like a regular stage dancer," he gloated, and she answered busily, "Yes, yes, I told you I could teach anybody. Don't take such long steps." For a moment he was robbed of confidence. With fearful concentration he sought to keep time to the music, but he was enveloped again by her enchantment. "She's got to like me. I'll make her," he vowed. He tried to kiss the lock beside her ear. She mechanically moved her head to avoid it, and mechanically she murmured, "Don't." For a moment he hated her, but after a moment he was as urgent as ever. He danced with Mrs. Orville Jones, but he watched Louetta swooping down the length of the room with her husband. "Careful, you're getting foolish," he cautioned himself, the while he hoped and bent his solid knees in dalliance with Mrs. Jones, and to that worldly lady rumbled, "She is hot." Without reason he thought of Paul in that shadowy place where men never dance. "I'm crazy tonight. Better go home," he worried, but he left Mrs. Jones and dashed to Louetta's lovely side, demanding, "Next is mine." "Oh, I'm so hot. I'm not going to dance this one." Then boldly, "Come out and sit on the porch, and we'll get all nice and cool." "Well." In the tender darkness, with the clamor in the house behind them, he resolutely took her hand. She squeezed his once, then relaxed. "Louetta, I think you're the nicest thing I know." "Well, I think you're very nice." "Do you? You got to like me. I'm so lonely." "Oh, you'll be all right when your wife comes home." "No, I'm always lonely." She clasped her hands under her chin, so that he dared not touch her. He sighed, "When I feel punk," and he was about to bring in the tragedy of Paul, but that was too sacred for even the diplomacy of love. "When I get tired at the office and everything, I like to look across the street and think of you. Do you know I dreamed of you one time?" "Was it a nice dream?" "Lovely." "Oh, well, they say dreams go by opposites. Now I must run in." She was on her feet. "Oh, don't go in yet, please, Llewellyn." "Yes, I must. I have to look out for my guests." "Let 'em look out for themselves."
"I couldn't do that." She carelessly tapped his shoulder and slipped away. But after 2 minutes of shamed and childish longing to sneak home, he was snorting,
"Certainly I wasn't trying to get chummy with her." Knew there was nothing doing all the time.